Hi, this is Corey Sievers with the Savvy team, and in this particular episode of Healthy Savvy Life, episode number 2, we're going to be chatting about 3 underlying or little known triggers that could be causing weight gain for you or someone that you care about. So these are some of the little known things that can really trigger weight gain. You know, it's interesting that when we talk about weight gain, weight problems, all that sort of thing, everybody sort of says that you're not exercising enough and you're eating too much. They say it's the basic law of thermodynamics. So it's like dealing with the fact that we have the physics going on in us, the energy in, energy out. But there's a lot more when we're dealing with biology, and weight loss in our body is biology. There's another layer of rules on top. And there are lots of things that can mess things up for you in terms of what can stop you from achieving your best physique. So I wanted to go through these 3 particular little known triggers that can cause or little known triggers for weight gain. And this really we deal with this by going back to a study that found that it was actually easier for you to be skinny in the 1980s than it is today. Now that might be pretty freaky to you to think about that, and it's not because we're eating too much and eating too much and not exercising enough. It's they weren't skinnier back then because of all the jazzercising and the Jane Fonda workouts and the aerobics and all that sort of thing. But many of the problems did start back then. So the conclusion that these study authors found is that there must be factors other than diet and physical activity that are contributing to this increase in weight for the population over time. So they looked into it. So here is what they found. So this was published in the Journal of Obesity Research and Clinical Practice. And the authors examined the dietary data of like 36,000 people between 1971 and 2008. They looked at the physical activity of nearly 15,000 people between 1988 and 2006. And they grouped it all together, looked at food and all that sort of thing, and they found that it was definitely easier to be skinny in the 1980s than it is today. And here's what they found. People today who eat and exercise the same amount as people did 20 years ago are still fatter. So even if you ate exactly the same things, you'd still tend to weigh more. They found that it's harder for adults to maintain the same weight as those 20 to 30 years ago did, even at the same levels of food intake and exercise. And they found that people today are about 10% heavier than people were in the 1980s, even if they followed exactly the same diet and exercise. And so if you're like most people, that's probably a bit surprising to you. The fact that, something else has gone awry apart from diet and exercise, because we've got gym memberships galore and we've got all of this, people supposedly know more. We've got the free flow of information with the internet, and yet there's something else going on. So here's what the researchers identified and put forward. They said that, first of all, people are exposed to more chemicals that can be weight gain inducing. Okay, so they said from things like pesticides, flame retardants, substances and chemicals in foods and packaged foods, things from personal care ingredients and home care products, those sorts of things, that these are somehow wrecking our hormonal processes and tweaking the way our bodies put on and maintain weight. So that was the number 1. Number 2, they said that the use of prescription drugs has risen dramatically since the 70s, 80s. For example, they put forward that Prozac, for example, the first blockbuster SSRI came out in 1988. And so antidepressants are now one of the most commonly prescribed medications on the market, and many of them have actually been linked to weight gain. So number one could be the chemicals you're exposed to. Number two could be prescription drug increase. Now, obviously, it's important that if you're on anything like an antidepressant or anything, you don't just go off that. You obviously work with your doctor. I'm just reporting the news from this particular study published in the Journal of Obesity in Clinical Practice. So number three, the third issue that the researchers saw was that the authors believed that the microbiomes, the gut bacterial colonies, have somehow changed between the 80s and now. Okay? And so it is well known, it's well documented that some types of bacteria can make a person prone to put on weight. So that's it. They're the three underlying triggers. Could be chemicals, could be medication use that's triggering issues for you, and it could be the microbiome. Your gut bacteria, the colonies of bacteria, are messed up. So let's look at some of the sources of these EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals. And here in the Savvy Team Wellness community, we're routinely helping people to avoid these sorts of things. So you can get EDCs from food and drink, from furniture outgassing, from home electricals outgassing, from the chemicals in water, from pesticides that are sprayed on the foods if you're not eating organic food, from environmental pollution, from cosmetics and personal care and cleaning products. Now, the cosmetics and personal care and the cleaning products, these are direct exposures. See, some of the others are sort of more indirect, whereas the interesting thing about these is that the endocrine disrupting chemicals in many of the formulas out there, you're directly applying them to your skin. So that causes a real issue. So let's just look at other research that was done with obesity. And, you even hear some researchers saying that it's genetics. Well, here are two genetically identical mice. Now, the one on the right was exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals, and the one on the left had no exposure. So, and the one on the right was obese. And so, can you afford to ignore these findings? It's just so important. Really, we encourage you to clean up, clean out, change to safer alternatives, seek out brands that are actually focused on safety consciousness, look for more, shop from more alternative places. It just makes such a big difference for all-round health and well-being. So since we're on the concept of exposure to chemicals, another chemical that we're exposed to when we're talking about pesticides and what's in our food is the exposure to Roundup, to glyphosate. So this is many experts are believing that this is one of the big triggers as well. So take, for example, in fact, people such as Dr. Stephanie Seneff is a big outspoken proponent of eliminating the use of these glyphosate products, or, Roundup, basically glyphosate there. Anyway, and so when you look at the graphs about adjusted deaths due to obesity, it all started to go up. Obesity rates and deaths related to that increased substantially when soon after the usage of these glyphosates on crops such as corn. So, if you're avoiding many grains and you're avoiding the commercial seed oils like we recommend here in the Savvy Team, then you're actually going to be pretty much avoiding many of those genetically modified crops and etc. So just avoid the processed seed oils and grains, and you're going to get rid of most exposure to these glyphosates. Now, what many people look at, and there's another, I'll show you the next one too. So obesity, it's also linked to diabetes. Think about the amount of people struggling with their weight and struggling with diabetes. So this is all related to the correlation and the rising incidence of diseases and chronic health conditions thanks to glyphosate exposure. So obviously you'll want to avoid using it in your home and all that sort of thing too, but you just can't, it's just so important to find all sources of toxins and reduce them. So here in the Savvy Team, we say that it can be really simple. We've got to reduce toxicity from all sources and increase the good nutrients from our food. So avoid packaged foods, all those sorts of things, avoid the exposure to these chemicals, and you'll start to really stack the odds in your favor. So when you really think about it, all of this advice we've been given about eating less and exercising more, eat less fat, eat more complex carbohydrates, eat more often, all of these sorts of things. It's a lot, there's a lot of misinformation out there when we see this sort of research coming forward. So this is why here in our organization we say that really, in essence, it's not your fault that if you've struggled with weight, but it is your responsibility from this point forward. The reason we say it's not your fault is because you probably haven't been told by medical authorities about the exposure of endocrine disrupting chemicals, what these are doing to you, and through the media, etc. There's a lot of packaged fast food mass media marketing that you succumb to as well, and that's, there's influence professionals trying to get you to eat the naughty foods, and not too many people trying to stop you. And then we have a lot of this diet misinformation from authorities. So, we want to help you to be savvy. And what does be savvy mean? Savvy is astute, sharp, perceptive, and informed. So that's what we want you to be. And that's what this show is all about, really helping you with some daily bites to help you think about what you can do to improve your health and well-being now and into the future. So there you have it. If you have been struggling with weight issues, then getting rid of the chemicals, talking to your doctor about perhaps eliminating some any unnecessary medication or what may be causing you trouble, and then really starting to eat to nurture your gut microbiome, maybe looking at probiotics, fermented foods, and these sorts of things to bring about a natural balance back to your system. So that's it for this particular episode of the of Healthy Savvy Life, as we're calling it. Lost my windows here. So, yeah. All right. I think that's about it. Just checking out whether there's any comments with anyone live. Again, if you have any questions, then definitely give us drop us a line. Actually, if you leave a comment, if you'd like to be able to tap in and be notified through Messenger of upcoming shows, then just leave us a comment and follow the instructions and we can get you on that particular list. So that's it from me. All the best, and we look forward to catching you next time around.